Sorry, I ran out of water. Well, thanks, Yarton. Thanks very much to everybody at NRDC and ITAG for organising this, and it's a great honour to be here and to speak with you all today. Let me see if I can get this. Oops. So, as Yarton mentioned, I work for an organisation, the University City Science Centre, we just call it the Science Centre, located in Philadelphia. For those of you who may not be familiar with Philadelphia, Philadelphia is a large city. It's, I think, the 5th or 6th largest metro centre in the United States. We're also, like Pittsburgh, located in Pennsylvania, although we're on the other side of the state. We're located about halfway between New York City and Washington, D.C., about an hour and a half away from each of those centres. Philadelphia has a large or a diversified economy, but we're probably best known for what we call EDs and MEDs. So on the EDs side, we have something like 100 universities and colleges of education around the region. The city actually ranks second in the US for the number of PhD-trained residents. On the med side, we have 6 medical schools. There's an often cited statistic, which I can't verify the truth of, that something like 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 physicians in the United States does one part of their training in Philadelphia. Certainly Philadelphia is the home of the National Board of Medical Examiners that licenses almost all of the physicians throughout the country. On the industry side, we're probably best known for pharmaceuticals. We have a number of large pharmaceutical companies that are headquartered in or around Philadelphia, including GSK, for example. Although we've got an increasing presence of medical devices and digital health in the region as well. And I think Chris will probably talk more a little bit about Pennsylvania in general, but aside from the EDs and MEDs, of course, we also have representatives working in industries like energy and advanced materials. So the Science Centre is a research park, and as Yarton mentioned, I'm going to give you a slightly different perspective because we're not a university. So I want to talk a little bit about how do organisations like research parks and economic development organisations fit into the puzzle of tech transfer. So a little bit of background about the organisation. We are a 17-acre research park in the western part of the city. We were established in 1963, so we've been around for a little bit more than 50 years. In fact, there were 2 research parks that were created in the 1 or 2 years prior to the Science Centre. One was at Stanford University. The other one many of you may have heard of was Research Triangle Park in North Carolina. We were the 3rd research park to be created within the United States, and we were the first research park to be established in a highly urban area. And this was done as a way of revitalizing the physical neighborhoods around the West Philadelphia region. We are a private, non-profit organisation. We're not government-owned, so we're an NGO, but we're a completely independent non-profit organisation. We work very closely with both industry, universities, and with government. And so I think earlier on we heard about the P3, and we like to think of ourselves as an example of that public-private partnership. So although we are not a university, we are actually owned by a consortium of universities. So when we were first established in 1963, there were 5 universities that came together to create the organisation. Today we have 31 university shareholders. Because we're a non-profit, by charter, all of our shareholders are also non-profit universities and research institutions. And I know it's a bit hard to read, and many of you are probably not that familiar with a lot of the names that are on here, but the universities that are our shareholders are not just located in Philadelphia, they are located throughout Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. So because of the location of our shareholders, we are really a regional economic development organisation. We're not just focused on the city of Philadelphia, but rather on the entire region. Collectively, the universities and research institutions that we work with do something like, this is an estimate, around about $2 billion in healthcare-related R&D each year. And what we do is to provide services, we provide access to resources, and we provide access to infrastructure primarily to support those universities in commercializing their technologies and in working with startup and established companies. We don't just work with our shareholder organizations, we work with a number of universities that are not shareholders, both within the United States and elsewhere. In fact, we're very proud to be beginning to do some work with the University of Pittsburgh that you heard earlier on. So we are very committed to the idea of regional and networked commercialization, and we think that that's one of the strengths of research parks and economic development organizations, is that they can help to create networks among universities and among companies as almost neutral third parties. We primarily work, our touch point at most of the universities are the offices of technology management or the offices of technology transfer. So our goal is to help to maximize the value of commercial technologies, both that are being developed by research institutions as well as technologies that are coming out of companies. And we really look to do this in two ways. Firstly, by aggregating resources and expertise. So that's the first sort of support pillar of our mission. And the second is to try and lower the barriers by which to deploy those resources and that expertise. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about what that means through some of the programs that we run. So I want to start with the ingredients. So this is when I talk about aggregating resources, these are the ingredients that we are attempting to bring together with our university partners. And we're very big believers in starting with market need. So rather than starting with what technologies are there, we try and begin by understanding what are the problems that stakeholders in a particular area are interested in. And we work with more than 100 companies and investors, hospital systems in our region to help to understand and define what that market need is. Of course, the technology solution is the critical piece and the reason that we're all here. As I mentioned, we work with a number of our shareholders and non-shareholder academic institutions, but we also work with startup companies and established companies both in the Philadelphia region and beyond. And we work with a number of international companies, and I'll talk a little bit about that when I talk about our programs. I think somebody mentioned before, I think it might have been Mark, but I'm sure this theme has come up many times, the importance of pairing appropriate expertise, so finding people with business and clinical expertise and pairing them with people with technical expertise. So we work very diligently to build a network of people who have either got general business product development expertise or who are specialized in particular areas such as product regulation or reimbursement or manufacturing. We have about 200 people that are in our vetted network of experts. Of course, funding, I purposely didn't put this first, although most people that I talk to, that's one of the first things that they think about, but funding is an important ingredient. The Science Centre both provides direct seed funding to projects and to companies through our programs, but we also work as a conduit for obtaining or locating financing, both government financing as well as private financing from our government and investor partner organisations. And then finally, I've got it here as ecosystem, but I think the I4, we would maybe call this infrastructure. We really see it as the same thing. We have about 2.5 million square feet of facilities on our campus today that are specifically dedicated towards innovation and commercialization. And an important piece of that, which I won't talk too much about, it's not just about bricks and mortar, it's about how do you develop the community that is sort of within that infrastructure. So that's an important part of what some of my colleagues at the Science Centre are focused on. So that's the ingredients. I like to think of this a little bit like the recipe. So this is how we are looking to bring those ingredients together. And I haven't put all of our programs here, but we have, I put a couple of examples in two main buckets. The first one is on technology commercialization. In technology commercialization, we're really focused on how do we support technologies that are still being developed within the environment of the academic space. So our earliest program is our QED Proof of Concept program. Here we're looking specifically at technologies that are pre-company. We provide up to $200,000 worth of direct investment in partnership with the university to professors who are working on technologies that our companies and investors believe have commercial potential. And then we pair those scientists with business advisors, product development experts who then do the proof of concept work around the technology. Phase 1 Ventures is a relatively new program for us. Here we're working with universities specifically around the idea of launching technologies out of the university, typically through startup companies. You'll see that there are very similar themes in all of our programs. You know, it starts with identifying what the need is, applying some strategic funding, and then attaching expertise, in this case, in the form of an entrepreneur, one or more entrepreneurs in the program team. The other set of programs that we run are more focused on business acceleration. So they're focused on companies that have already been created and now may be collaborating with universities but are outside of the immediate university environment. I've highlighted Global Soft Landing here because we run a number of programs that are focused specifically on companies from overseas that are looking to gain entry to the US market. But our Global Soft Landing program is really part of a larger business incubation program that we run that also includes, of course, many domestic companies. A digital health accelerator is an example of a direction that we're starting to head in now, not so much on the industry vertical, although we're very interested in digital health, but more because we are beginning to understand that some of the gaps for our companies exist not at the technology development stage, but really at the customer acquisition stage. And so we're beginning to put programs in place that help our startup companies to identify and engage with customers at the beginning of their sales cycle. I want to just quickly take you through a couple of examples. I want to talk first about a company, UE Life Sciences. So back in 2008, there were a couple of researchers at Drexel University in Philadelphia that had determined that they could use a piezoelectric sensor to by applying this to the surface of the skin, they could determine whether or not there were cancerous tissues underneath the skin. And they were very interested in how this could be applied, particularly for identifying breast cancer. So they came to the Science Centre in 2009, having done some very basic work. I mean, they had a couple of pieces of metal with some wires sticking out. It's the very early sort of lab stage of a product. And they applied to the QED program. We provided them with some funding and attached them to some business experts and clinicians who helped them to establish that they could indeed differentiate cancerous tissues in samples from normal tissues. In 2010, an entrepreneur came across the technology and licensed it into a startup company, UE Life Sciences, and the company was successful at raising about $800,000 of funding from the state of Pennsylvania. And they used that funding to take the product from the two pieces of metal with the wires sticking out to through industrial design and to productize the technology. And in 2013, they came back to us and joined the Digital Health Accelerator, where we funded them to do the work that would help them to address the regulatory burden from the FDA, and they received their FDA approval the following year. This company's now raised about $4 million in VC funding, and they've taken what was originally a lab idea out into the clinic. They are specifically looking to deploy this product in markets where there are less established screening mechanisms for breast cancer. So they're doing that actually primarily in India and China. They're working a lot around Mumbai and with the Ministry of Health there, but also in certain markets in China, in Latin America, and soon in North Africa. And so this was, somebody mentioned this before about, at the end of the day, what you want to see is something that ends up helping people, right? I mean, that's why we're all doing this. And so a story like this I find particularly inspiring, because I remember seeing the technology when it was literally just a couple of pieces of wire, and now there are people that are actually being helped by this technology at the other end. I want to talk quickly about a company that's come the other way. So this Adaptimmune is a company that is developing immunotherapies for cancers. They are using receptors from the body's own immune cells to identify and treat cancers. The original technology was actually developed at Oxford University in the UK. And Adaptimmune came to Philadelphia and joined our Global Soft Landing program in 2011 to establish their US headquarters there. They had one employee at the time, and their main goal was to partner with universities and medical centers to begin the process of clinical evaluation of their technology. They were pretty quiet between 2011 and 2014. They were working away on their products, but 2014 to 2015 they had a phenomenal year. They completed a partnership with GSK worth about $350 million to co-develop several of their products. They then went on to close a Series A worth a little bit over $100 million, and finally went public. I don't know how many of you know Shake Shack, but Shake Shack is a big company in the US that went public on the same day as Adaptimmune. Shake Shack got a lot more media attention. Adaptimmune raised more money though. And actually, I happened to just run into the US corporate head the other day on the street, and she told me they have literally just moved they've now built their own building in Philadelphia, and they've literally just moved into it. They have something like 50 employees now, and again, they've gone from sort of a single person working on an idea to now a reasonably well-established company. So everybody's got their own stats, right? These are some of our stats for the 50-year history at the Science Centre. We have had something like 450 graduates of the Science Centre that are still in business today. And roughly a little bit more than, or roughly about a third of those companies are still operating within the region. Those companies that are still operating within the Philadelphia region are responsible for about $13 billion of economic output every year, and are responsible for around about 1% of all of the jobs in the Philadelphia region. So what's in the future for us? We've just, in the last year, completed a deal that will expand, almost double our campus. So we're going to rebrand the entire innovation district in which we operate as UCity Square. This will take our campus to about 6 million square feet of space. So we're excited about being one of a number of players in the Philadelphia region, and I'm hoping to invite all of you to come and visit us at some stage. And if any of you are looking to build a building in Philadelphia, we have the space for you. So finally, I'll just finish by seriously talking about how we or how we're looking to partner with other organisations. So we're always interested in collaborating with research institutions throughout the US and globally that have an interest in tech transfer, and who feel that we may have compatible or synergistic resources. We're also interested in partnering with commercialization organizations that are interested in either helping to bring startup companies out of the US and into their own marketplaces, or who are looking to partner with us to help to bring companies from, say, India in this case, into the US. And of course, we're always looking to collaborate with co-investors in economic development. So people who are looking to explore direct investment either here in India or in the US, we're always happy to have those conversations. So with that, thank you all for your time. So,